Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Joining us here on the program today is someone who's going to share an interesting story that at a point in her life, she was bound in a wheelchair at 88 pounds with cancer and only a week and a half to live. She discovered the miracle of 5-minute actions that brought her back to life. Our guest today will discuss about the 3 best and quickest ways to instantly relax your body and your mind, the latest trends and how our minds influence whether or not we will create sustained energy, vitality, and great health, and ways that we can instantly overcome overwhelming stress and extreme fatigue. We'll also take a look at the myth that it's said that for us to have any kind of energetic benefit that we must exercise at least 30 minutes a day. Well, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program is author, educator, and internationally renowned speaker with more than 30 years of experience at the forefront of nutrition, health, and education, and she has a practice that spans the globe. She is author of the book Instant Energy, the 5 Keys to Unlimited Energy and Vitality. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program our guest, Dr. Marilyn Joyce. Dr. Joyce, thank you for being on the program today.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me on the program today.
Now, as a doctor, how did you find yourself in that particular predicament?
That's a really great question. Basically, I think, Daniel, the problem is that although I was trained initially in yoga and alternative philosophies and beliefs and techniques for being well, I ended up going back to university and becoming a registered dietitian and then going on from there. But the thing was that I went into the traditional orthodox medical world. And so, I think I forgot a lot of the things I had learned. I remembered them later, but I forgot a lot of the things I learned. And I predisposed myself to sickness because of living a stressful life like so many people do in the developed countries, right? I was working at an administrative job that I didn't like, but it paid the bills, and I had 2 teenage kids to support, and I was a single mom at that point. And, it was just a whole conglomeration of things that later on, when I look back, I could really easily distinguish what the problems were. But when I was going through it, I couldn't, and I never took time out for me at all, which is often one of the most challenging things in our culture to do as well. I think, there's a lot more, but those are some of the key things.
It's interesting that you bring that up. Years ago, I was talking with a guest who wrote a book that was talking about immigrants that come here to America. And he says she was saying, one of the things that was puzzling a lot of foreigners is that here in America, we tend to micromanage our lives. Like over-micromanage, it seems like. And it's like, here's all this wealth or the potential for this, and we're basically running ourselves into the ground for something like this. And, you can just imagine these immigrants thinking to themselves, well, we believe in hard work, but we also believe in a lot of relaxation as well.
Exactly. Community and relaxation. I mean, it was such a foreign thing to me when I traveled around the world and experienced siestas. It's like, what? You take how long out? An hour and a half, or even in some cases 3 hours? Oh, my goodness.
I know I was over in Spain, and that was exactly what happens. They do that siesta thing right in the middle of the day, and the sun shuts down for 3 hours, 4 hours maybe, and then it comes alive again. I was thinking, this feels kind of good.
Oh, it was excellent. And they go later in the day, but they have that great time in the middle of the day, and they socialize, and then they sleep, and they play, and they eat. And, we've gotten so far away from all of that. And, when you look at the blue zones, Daniel, that these areas where the people live over 100 and they still have all their parts, they don't have any plastic tubing added or somebody else's heart or liver or anything. They literally have their own body. And how do they get to that place? Well, these blue zones, one of the key things they have is community. They have community, and they have things around community, like taking the time out. And again, in our culture, people feel guilty when they take time out. Oh, no, I got to get this done. I got to get that done. I got to get this done. I got to go here. I got to go there. And all those things may be important, but we also have to program in self-care. And, for so many people, that was my journey. I never programmed in self-care. And when I work with a client, when I first start working with them, they have to, we go through a whole diagnostic consultation to look at their lives. And I'm going to tell you, it's that thing about not taking time out, not breathing properly, not taking the time out, not having community, feeling isolated and lonely, things that I didn't see in those areas where people lived very long lives and enjoyed living.
That's so true, too, as I was suggesting, when people look to build better lives, starting a business, whatever it may be, they find themselves seemingly becoming more and more miserable about the whole thing because they find that they're working more and more and more because they want more and more and more. And you think that a person who decides, well, I want to take a break. I really want to enjoy the abundance of life with time. And I'm sure that in a situation as you faced back in the late 1980s, being bound by a wheelchair, again with cancer and just weeks to live, that you were thinking to yourself, the most valuable asset we really actually have is time.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if nothing else, what I had was a lot of time to think about things when I was in that wheelchair, because it was 6 months where I was stuck and I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything for myself. I literally couldn't eat or drink anything. I had to suck on ice chips towards the end, and, what was supposed to be the end. And during that time, it's interesting the reflections that you do. And I had attended, I was forced to attend a seminar by one of my family members with a speaker who said, he had very pertinent questions. He said, if you only had a month to live, what's the last thing you'd want to do? And what's the last place you'd want to go? Wow, here I am literally facing that, and I'm listening to this. And then he also had us write a list of all the people we would want to meet before we left the planet. And my list was 47 people. And I will say I have met all 47 of those people that I wanted to meet on that list because I've been here blessed by that miracle weekend that saved my life for 27 years now. So, it really, but I had to learn a lot of things that I teach people about, getting back to the basics with what you're eating. I mean, look at our abominable diet that we have now. People eat party food 3 times a day. I remember when that was like a treat when you went to a person's birthday party or something, hamburger and French fries. But now it's like party food all day long because we're all living such busy lives that we don't even take a few minutes to prepare a really simple, basic, healthy meal, like the ones I have in the book Instant Energy. It's like the meals in there are really simple, 5 to 10 minutes to make, and they're all healthy. And talking about, I always think about fast food. We talk about fast food. I don't see anything fast about sitting in a line for 20 or 30 minutes to get a hamburger and French fries that's then cold by the time you get to somewhere where you can eat it, unless you're scoffing it down in traffic, which is not a healthy thing to do either. But what about an apple? What about a pear? What about, fresh veggies, that you've cut up and put in a baggie to carry with you? That's fast food, and that's healthy. So it's reframing everything, right?
I remember the movie, Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, where he's trained by a Korean martial artist to become an assassin. And apparently he made a comment to the guy who he was about to train's partner, and he says, he smells like hamburgers. And then later on in the program, he was becoming kind of in that situation where he was craving that because he was kind of now became a prisoner, and Chun's house was his name, Chun the Korean. And he says, I sure wouldn't mind getting a hamburger or something like that right now because all he was having was rice, and sometimes he'd be treated with a little honey added to it. But what was funny is he says, you know why they call it fast food? Because it is a fast way to the grave. And then he starts laughing at his own joke, of course. But, that's so true what you're saying. When I was reading in your book, especially about the diet in America, I remember going to one of those grocery stores kind of in bulk, where you can buy in bulk. And I was astounded at the number of carts that I had seen with processed food. Most of my stuff was in plastic produce bags.
Right.
And I'm looking at these boxes, and then I'm looking at the people that are pushing these carts, and it explains to me why you look the way you look.
True. Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, because of my work, of course, I can go into a grocery store, and before the people even start putting stuff in the cart, I kind of know what they're going to put there. And 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, I'm right on the money with it. It's interesting because I had a one time, quite a few years ago now, I had returned from a speaking tour, and it was late at night, and the only store that was open was a Ralph's store instead of like a health food store, which is what I would have gone to, Trader Joe's even, which is, I don't know if Trader Joe's is everywhere, but it's certainly over here. But anyway, long and short of it was that I'm standing in the grocery store line. First of all, I went into the store, and we had been telling the manager, and I got all my friends to do it. If you had more organic food here, we'd shop here more often. If you had more organic food, we'd shop here more often. And I went in that night, and they knew me by now, of course. And so the assistant manager came over and said, we've got a whole organic section, Marilyn. You've got to see it. So he takes me over, and I filled my cart with all this organic stuff. I go through to the checkout, and in front of me is this woman with all these packages of stuff. And her little girl said, Mommy, look, she's got all the stuff we always get, but we don't have any of that. And we looked at each other and started to laugh, and it turned out she was one of the head people with the American Cancer Society. This is not typically what they ate, were all these packaged things, but she said she made the best choices. And she bet, though, we made a bet that my full cart of groceries, which ended up being 8 bags, would be less money than her 2 bags of packaged processed food, because we were bantering back and forth about it's expensive to eat healthy. Well, is it? Well, it turned out that my 8 bags of groceries were 2 cents less in total. So it wasn't a huge differential, but she only had 2 bags of groceries. And, that just showed me conclusively that buying packaged foods is not a cheap way to go. We always hear how people buy the packages because they're cheaper. You get more for your money or whatever. But that's just really not true if you know how to shop. It's really learning how to shop and how to, what's healthy, what's not. You do have to, if you're on a budget, buy things on sale, but that's easy enough to do as well if you're checking what's on sale, And we're blessed with all the big stores we have today that are carrying more and more organic food. Costco's never carried anything organic back when I was going through my journey. But I don't even think it existed, to be quite honest. But
now I have to ask, because you're a doctor, how was it that you went about having your cancer treated?
That is an absolutely great question.
Well, I want to ask this question, and the reason is because, someone takes a look at your book, Instant Energy, they're going to see a lot of things in here that you're seeing more and more of. And why I say this is true is because more people seem to be stepping away from the traditional treatment model. And doctors seem to be fighting them on this. And certainly pharmaceutical companies are doing the very same thing. And the insurance industry is doing the same thing. It's like they're trying to tell people, look, you'll either treat your cancer the way we tell you to do it or you'll die or go to jail. And I'm thinking, I would like to hear a doctor's perspective on this, especially because of the work that you've put out there.
That's such a strong question and a very important one. I did go through 3 rounds of chemotherapy. I mean, I was in the medical world. I was working in hospitals. So I was basically, led down the garden path of chemotherapy. And that was how they treated uterine cancer back in the 80s, with bolus chemo. So what happened for me was I knew that if I continued after the first 3 rounds, if I continued with 3 more, I wouldn't be here. I would have been gone. And my thought was, I may still be gone, but I don't want to die this way. I was spending more time talking to the great white telephone in the bathroom, if you get my drift, than I was doing anything else. And so my feeling was I'd rather die with quality of life and people around me that I love than be this wreck of a physical being. Now, it didn't say, I won't say that my journey was easy, but when I walked away from that, I went in and out of, remission. And basically I was trying all the different things that were out there that I had never heard of before or never seen before because of being in the medical world. They were absolutely new to me. And you couldn't just go on and Google something like you can now. back when I was going through it, you had to go into a library and look up stuff on the microfiche, and when you're really sick with cancer, that can be very gruesome too. So, but basically that was what I did, and I discovered all these different treatments, and I literally traversed the world, leaving no stone unturned as I tried every what I call magic bullet or miracle cure, and they worked to a degree. I believe that that's what kept me alive long enough for my miracle weekend to occur, where it became totally about alternative methods that didn't involve a lot of travel either, because I was at the bottom of the barrel at that point. But it was really about having an open mind. I mean, it's do or die, really. I mean, cancer waits for no one. If you're not going to do anything, you're not going to be here. And if you're going to do the wrong thing, you're not going to be here. And quite frankly, I really believe that chemotherapy and radiation, oftentimes, now there are different treatments that are coming up, so I have to be careful about how I say this, but there are different treatments that are coming up, and there are institutions that are very advanced and forward-thinking and have found ways to integrate the whole, what we call alternative medicine. I would say, complementary medicine would be a better word, really. They found ways to put the two together and work with the patient and do slow drip and small amounts of chemo that are not as strong, and they're getting very good results with those. So, I was resistant to even admitting that chemo could be of any value at all. But having seen that work with some of my patients, I have to say it's not all bad, but if you have the choice, it would be better to really do something that's not going to potentially take you to a place of malnutrition. Most cancer patients do not die of cancer. They die of malnutrition because they get to a point like I was at where I couldn't eat or drink anything, and they didn't have the blessing of meeting Jim the Vitamix man, who's probably no longer around, doing that kind of work. But he actually introduced me to ice chips so that I could suck on ice chips that had nutrition in them, maximum nutrition. And so that was really the beginning of me starting to get some nutrition into this body. And then from there, it was learning about the fact that, for example, with every illness, there's an emotional and psychological underlying reason as well. With cancer, it's basically unresolved emotional issues that have manifested themselves into tumors, into cancer. And so when we get to the root cause of what was going on for that person, which is what Dr. Bernie Siegel did with me, I really believe that that's what can completely change your outcome, is getting to what's going on underneath and resolving that at the same time as you're implementing good nutrition, excellent nutrition. I mean, the way that we work with people, Daniel, in our medical world today is we divide them up into pieces. Okay, we'll take care of the physical thing because that's a physical problem. We don't see that there's an emotional aspect, a spiritual aspect as well to all of that, and a psychological aspect. We have to work with people on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level as all one being, not fragmented parts. It's like we fragment our food and we take supplements instead of eating real food. There may be a place for supplements, but basically you got to start with real food. None of those cultures that lived over 100 years of age had supplements in their diet. It was all natural, whole food. So it's really getting back to that, and that's what I was saying about the blue zone, where people they live a holistic life, not a divided up life, a fragmented life. I hope that's making sense.
Well, no, it not only makes a lot of sense, but we had started covering neurosciences, let's go back probably 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And back in my 20s, I had a light kind of go on, and all of a sudden I'm diving into just about every self-help book you can imagine. I'm also pursuing my spiritual development and just ravenously reading about a lot of that sort of a thing. And no matter what I did, I kept finding myself kind of in the same life pattern, not really feeling like I was achieving goals or getting to where I thought I should be. Now, like I said, going back 9 years ago now, and doing the program, we started producing a series of segments about neuroscience. And all of a sudden it slowly began dawning on me that, most of the time when I make a choice in life, no matter what that choice is, it's usually led by an emotional component of a thought.
Yes.
Now, anybody who's addicted to something knows this. They may not understand how to deal with it right off if they're still in their addiction, but generally that's what it is. You have a thought that comes to mind, and if it has a strong enough emotional charge, you're generally going to make a decision on that thought, no matter how irrational it is. I mean, let's take a look at smoking cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes aren't good for you, so what do you light and fire one up for? Because there is a thought that has an emotional charge that compels you to need to do this. Yeah. And so you're hearing that a lot more now in the self-help language, even though this stuff goes back centuries.
Yes, it does.
And it was interesting because, in a few years I started really saying, I'm starting to understand how easy this is and starting to pay attention. What are my thoughts saying to me inside my head? And how do I start challenging these things and clearing the mind? And then I began to understand the value of meditation. And we're talking 15 years, 20 years.
Yes.
After I started exploring my spiritual development, where meditation was one of the key components, but there was all the mysticism, the language, and the romance and all that. But when you finally get, meditation clears and quiets my mind so that I'm really here in the moment making real decisions based on real evidence that's in front of me, it's a much different lifestyle than the other way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's the whole point. It's about living totally in the moment and not getting caught up in this shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and this is the way it should look, or this is how it should feel. That's why I came up with all these 5-minute strategies, because people just won't sit down and meditate for half an hour or exercise, and they make excuses why they can't go to the gym because it's going to take too long or whatever. And really what it comes down to is really getting to that place of living fully in the moment and not beating yourself up if you're not perfect about what you're doing, just doing the best you can in that moment and knowing that every time you make a better choice, that adds to fuel to the good fire, the fire of, expansion in doing more and more of the good things. What we focus on expands. So if you're focused on health, it doesn't happen overnight, but over time, you'll gradually see and experience a difference. For example, Daniel, what we know in biochemistry, which is my first foundational background, is that it takes approximately 90 to 120 days to replace all of your red blood cells, right? So during that time, what we learn through the mind-body connection is that in that time frame, you're also replacing your cellular memory with a new cellular memory. So if you're doing really good things and you're making positive changes like eating more vegetables, what will happen over time, as long as you're consistent and keep persisting even when you don't feel like it, is that in 3 to 4 months, it'll just be a part of what you do. And in fact, it'll feel odd to go back and do the other, if it was fried food and whatever that you were having before. It's harder to go back to that because you don't feel as good. Your body doesn't respond as well. But that's because you've also replaced the cellular memory, which changes your craving. So it's a beautiful thing when you understand it, because then we understand that thing of 21 days to create a habit. It actually takes 90 to 120 days. But that 21 days, if you're consistent about doing something that's different and odd and unusual for you, like eating more vegetables or eating more fruits or whatever, it'll suddenly become part of your life. And I see that with all my clients that I've worked with, because over the years, because people will come back for their annual checkup or whatever, and what will happen is when we look at what they are doing, it is through the consistency of our first months together working on their health. Now, years later, they're still eating the same way, they're still exercising the same way, they're still living a healthy life, a whole balanced life, though, not a fragmented life.
Now, here's an interesting thing for you as well that I thought I'd share since we're on this particular topic, very important topic, and that is, I remember I was talking with a psychologist a couple of years back, and she had an interesting book, and to me what was interesting about it is she talked about parts of the brain and explained what their function is. And it was very enlightening. It's like the hippocampus is one of those places with stored memory and emotional charge or something like that. And I could be off a little bit, but the whole idea was that you understand why you think and do the things you do.
Yes, that's right.
And I love this because here was another thing now. Now, let's take a look at this. Now, the brain, of all the organs, as I understand it, uses the most energy to function.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, when you think of everything the brain does, you know, the auto, this and that and the other. Now, here was something very enlightening that was written in this book here, was the fact that since the brain uses so much energy, what it tries to do is use it as efficiently as possible so the rest of the body can have what it needs, right?
Right.
So that's why we create habits, as she explains.
Yeah.
Now, she says the reason that happens is because the brain tries to find the most efficient way to integrate this habit and then go about its business of taking care of everything else. She says you will tend to feel resistance when you change a habit because now you're forcing the brain to burn some extra energy to adapt to a new habit that it's not used to. Now, that being said, the fact is, this is that point, let's say you decide you want to start jogging a few minutes every day so you can feel healthy, or you want to go to the gym as you're suggesting, or you want to eat better than you are right now. What will happen is it isn't so much that the brain is fighting you, it's that you're now into a little bit of a conundrum. You know, it's kind of like that stretch where you feel the pain a little bit. So then that thought comes into your head that says, you know, you did run a little bit yesterday. Let's go ahead and stay in bed a little bit longer today. You know you're going to feel it. We can go ahead and do it tomorrow. See, that's your brain actually saying, look, you know, you're causing me to work harder than I'm used to here, and I'm not so sure I'm digging it, so I'm going to throw some thoughts at you and see if we can just go back to the way things were. I mean, they were working so well before, weren't they? And if you could pay attention to that conversation and realize that's really what's going on, it's not you. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I agree. I mean, I'm not a specialist in the brain area, but I do know that when we allow our brain, you know, our mind, let's say, is really trying to protect us. That's really what it is. I mean, it's just trying to keep us out of danger, and it's a spontaneous reaction. And I think, you know, as we program it by doing certain things, that's what, you know, we just keep doing the same old until we reprogram. And yes, I do believe that you would use a lot more energy, the brain would use a lot more energy initially to create a new habit. But then once that habit's formed, then it, you know, that becomes your comfort area. And if it's a good habit, that's good. If it's a bad habit, like around Christmas, well, we've got the holiday season coming up, right? Thanksgiving and Christmas. And people start falling by the wayside. Oh, well, I'll just have a little of this. I'll just have a little of that. And before you know it, you're having a lot of everything. But, you know, for the people who have literally worked on it, and it's not as challenging as most people think, Daniel, if they do it in 5-minute segments. I think that's the key, is if you're an all-or-nothing person, you're going to have big problems. But if you learn that small changes make a big difference, that's where it starts. It's like, okay, what 5 minutes of walking is better than no walking at all. So if that's all I can fit in, that's all I'm going to do. And better still, why not get the equivalent of 5 minutes of fast walking? Fast walking or slow jogging, because according to NASA, that's the equivalent to jump on a rebounder or a mini trampoline. 5 minutes. That will do the same for you as that 35 to 40-minute jog or fast walk. So, you know, that is a blessing, and it's fun, and it detoxes the lymphatic system at the same time. So you beat the clock, and you've also taken your body to a new level, you know. So I think what it is it's that reprogramming, and then as you do it in 5-minute bites or chunks, that's not as fatiguing for the brain either, as it would be if you were trying to, I got to go to the gym for 35 minutes. Oh, gosh, and I got to drive there, and then I got to get a shower, and then I got to drive home. You know, the brain goes into, that's too much work. That's just way too much work. But if we go with the 5 minutes, like get an exercise ball, sit on the exercise ball, watch a comedy while you're on the exercise ball, because laughter is medicine as well. So do something like that while you're on the exercise ball, and it'll be almost as good as jumping on a rebounder. If you can't jump on a rebounder for 5 minutes, just bounce on that ball for 5 or 10 minutes while you're watching comedy. And so it's okay. Anybody can fit 5 minutes in, right? I think that's the key.
I agree. In fact,
Yeah.
I was just thinking of a friend of mine who owns a health spa, and years ago when I was talking with him, he says, you know, the biggest reason people fail is they put too much of a demand on themselves when they join the gym. They put way too much expectation.
Yeah.
And, you know, he would totally agree with everything you're saying, but here was his key piece of advice. If you're going to join a gym, he says, all you need to do is simply show up. And so if you're going to just simply show up, then make sure there's enough incentive at that gym that when you show up, you're going to enjoy yourself. And in this case here, he had a wonderful hot tub spa, steam room, a sauna. For me, that was enough. I'm just going to go and I'm going to sit in the steam room, take a shower, and go about my day. I've shown up to the gym, okay?
Yeah.
But he says the most interesting thing will begin to happen. Make sure you have incentives like that at a health spa that you go for that you really love, that if you even didn't work out, you know you would enjoy sitting in the hot tub for 15 minutes, you know,
Right.
whatever it is. But he says the most miraculous thing will begin to happen is you'll actually slowly begin exercising and working out. And he says, and the second thing is when you begin to exercise and work out, don't go with the intention of an outcome. For instance, I want to become a bodybuilder or stronger.
Right.
He says, just simply enjoy and feel the movement of the exercise you're doing. In other words, you're becoming one. Get a little zen here, but you know the idea is you're really enjoying and feeling yourself in your body. And he says that'll change your intention, and you'll begin to feel like this small miracle, as you had certainly discovered for yourself, start seeping in, and you'll find yourself really enjoying going to work out because you're there for totally different reasons now than you originally started out.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, Daniel, because it's about enjoyment. It's about joy. I don't believe that we came to this earth to live in hell, and most of us end up living in hell because we're afraid to experience joy on some level. We're always living in the past or we're living in the future, and we're not living in the moment. You know, we're not looking out around us in the moment. Right now I'm looking at a beautiful scene and lush. In Southern California, there's not much lush stuff, but I'm down in San Diego right now, and there's all this beautiful lush greenery in front of me, and I'm like feeling blessed as I'm talking to you and looking at this. Most people don't do that. They're thinking, oh, I've got this to do and I've got that to do, and oh, shoot, I forgot to do that, and oh, I didn't do that before, and I hope so-and-so's not angry at me. So we're living in all those thought patterns that are nothing about the here and the now. You know, there's nothing you can do about the past. The past is past, and the past does not determine your future unless you allow it to. Today, this moment is your gift. It's the present. It's your gift in hand. Use it wisely. And I think that's one of the key things that when I'm working with people, it's like, let's experience the joy. How can you get to joy quickly? Or at least how can you get to a place of peace quickly if you're really feeling overwhelmed and stressed out? And, you know, one of the fastest ways to do that, Daniel, is to have a gratitude journal and write 3 to 5 gratitudes, things that you're grateful for right now. You know, it could be the sunshine that you're experiencing. It could be the person in your life that you love. It could be the family. It could be your best friend. It could be a trip that you're about to take or that you've already taken where you experience incredible happiness. It's about having gratitude for everything, big and small, in your life. And the minute that you do that, you cannot be in negativity, frustration, overwhelm, anxiety, any of those things when you're in gratitude. The two cannot happen at the same time. So it's really about getting to that place and knowing that joy is our birthright. So go and do things that make you feel good. That was one of the other things in the blue zone areas, Daniel, was that when people were asked, I mean, these people were 100 years old and they were laughing and they were still working. They loved what they were doing and they were still working and they were loving life and they were loving everyone in their lives. And it was just an amazing experience to one experience it years ago when I hitchhiked around the world, and to experience it through this the whole study that was done on the blue zone areas, because that's where we see these people are just loving life. They're enjoying life regardless of whether they have a lot less than we have here. We spend most of our lives just accumulating stuff, and I can speak from experience on that because I'm getting rid of everything I own to go on the journey of 1,000 days. And I looked at all my stuff one day and realized my stuff owns me. I don't own it. And in a lot of these cultures where they have less, they don't have that to think about. We're locking our stuff up and, we're worried somebody's going to steal it or whatever. And they don't have that much, so they don't think about things in the same way. And I think getting to a simpler lifestyle is what gives us joy as well. It's really living in the now and simplifying your life. And, there's this minimalism movement going on, which I have been doing a lot of studying of because that's what I'm doing in my own life. But really looking at it and realizing that happiness comes and joy comes from the people and the experiences in your life. It doesn't come from the things in your life. It comes from feeling healthy as well. So make that a priority, to breathe in fresh air fully and to eat really wholesome food and to connect with people and tell them that you love them and hug a tree, hug a person, whatever.
Or go into a store that says we won't take any bills over 50s and see if they'll break a 50.
Right.
Or go into a place and say, is it okay if I solicit here, even though the sign outside says no soliciting? I like to do stupid little things like that, but it's really fun to catch people off in their day. And you walk away, like you said, and you're feeling pretty good yourself, like, that was kind of silly, but it sure was fun.
Yeah, and
quit taking ourselves so seriously so much.
Right. Oh, you're right on about that, Daniel. That is one of the biggest issues we have is people take themselves and everything too seriously. And, I remember years ago, I won't say it quite the way it was said to me, but there was a newspaper reporter that was a dear friend of mine, and she was talking about life, and I was talking about some of the problems. It was during my cancer journey. And she said, don't sweat the small stuff, and remember, it's all small stuff. She used a different word, but when you think about it, at the end of the day, it really is all small stuff. We make big things out of nothing. And when you think of even people who've lost everything in a typhoon, come back and start over. Life is ebbs and flows. And if you can learn to just go with the ebbs and flows of life, you'll have a lot more peace, a lot more happiness, and a lot more joy in your life, for sure.
And I've heard, and this has been pretty consistent, that most people who go through tremendous adversity, we certainly can say that you're one of them, when you're able to just walk through that, and you're able to heal, and you're able to continue to take one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, you realize your life has become richer as a result of that. And you can't see that in the storm at the time.
No.
But, take a look, for instance, that lovable movie Forrest Gump.
Oh, yes.
Lieutenant Dan couldn't see life after his legs got blown off. He was supposed to die in this war, apparently. And there he is on this shrimp boat. The storm comes, and he's challenging God, basically, up on the crow's nest. Then the next day, it's serene and peaceful, and he falls out of the boat and goes for a swim. And he realized just how rich or much richer his life was because he was saved in the war by Forrest, and that he got to have these experiences and new opportunities he probably never had even dreamed of before.
Exactly. I mean, we always hear that expression where one door closes, another door opens, if you're willing to walk through that door. And that's the key. Are you willing to walk through that door? I mean, when people go through tremendous adversity, there does come that point where you ask yourself, what matters now? And from there, that's a defining moment. You can walk through the fire into a new way of existing on this planet and in your life. And, that it's not without effort. That's the thing. A lot of times, I think the movies like The Secret, which I love this movie, The Secret, but it was a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? It was lacking something. And I think it was that aspect of you can't just sit and hope that joy is going to come to you, or that peace is going to come to you, or that abundance is going to come to you. You have to know what you want and then go for it. And the bigger your vision is for something that's service to humanity, or it doesn't have to be a big vision. Ordinary things done in an extraordinary way is the way I guess I kind of look at it. If you can really look at what can I do for somebody else. Like, for example, if somebody's feeling really low or depressed, the best way to get out of that is to immediately go and do service for somebody else. Go to the hospital and talk to somebody who hasn't had anyone talk to them for days. Go help feed the poor or the homeless. Do something that gets you out of your own funk because you're doing something for another person. The fastest way to get, because when you're in a depressed state or an anxious state, usually it's because you're focused on your own problems. But when you remove yourself from your own problems, even if it's just for a few minutes or an hour to do something for somebody else, it's amazing. And another thing that I really recommend is, if you're on social media or you're anywhere, around social media, you probably have at least 200 people on your friend list or whatever. Write a note to one of them every single day and say, look at what they're saying, and then write something that's pertinent. Don't BS them, but, I just wanted to say that reading your post has brightened my day today. Something like that, and just sending that message out. One, you're doing something for somebody else, and that somebody else is going to feel it, but it's a ripple effect. It goes out, and everything's energy after all anyway, so that energetic frequency will go out throughout the planet.
It's interesting because you remind me of a suggestion that someone made about how to improve. Let's say that you're someone who enjoys Twitter. And I do Twitter from time to time, but I'm not ravenous like some people where it's daily. But
right.
The suggestion was if you really want to build a good following, what you need to do is you need to tweet out to 3 new people a day. And that's not really a whole lot. And they said do it for at least 30 days, and you will see a change. And so that's what I did. There was a day or two, because it's a new habit that I follow through, but I'll go ahead and make up for that, now by going to 6 people instead of 3. But I did. I actually stayed the course, and I finally finished it. And it was really interesting. I wouldn't say that right away that in 30 days it built a huge following, but what was more enjoyable were the kind of people you were seeing come into your stream and the kinds of things you were talking about. And the most important thing is it wasn't easy at first because you really have to think of, well, if I'm going to reach out and tweet directly to this person, what do I have to say that's relevant? So you actually had to think about what you were doing.
Yes, that's right.
Crazy stuff. A great book here for people, Instant Energy. I'm sure by this conversation they're going to be thinking to themselves, boy, I really got to dive into this. But what I'd like you to do, because you talk about a couple of ways that you can instantly overcome overwhelming stress and extreme fatigue, let's talk about what a person can do to share with our listeners here so they got a little bit of an arsenal until they finally get to Amazon or wherever they can find this and have this as part of their library.
Yes, and just a quick aside, it is available at drmarilynjoyce.com, so if they're looking for it, and they'll also get lots of free gifts that go with it when they do it through the website. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yes, Daniel, I would love to share some things with people because I like people to go away feeling like they can immediately take some steps. So
well, I think we gave them a good couple of them anyway.
I'm sure we did. Oh, yeah, over the course of the time that we've spoken, absolutely. But one of the key things that people don't do is, first, when you're really feeling overwhelmed and anxious, get off your seat and on your feet. Change your physiology immediately. Turn off the phone, shut the computer down, even if it's only for 5 minutes. Go get a glass of water, which is a great thing to do for instantly energizing yourself, by the way, because most people are dehydrated. So the fastest way to up your ante of energy is to drink a full glass of water. And most, like I said, most people are dehydrated. They're not drinking enough water during the day. And coffee is not a substitute for water. I have to emphasize that. It's a diuretic. If you love your coffee, have your coffee, but only 1 or 2 cups a day at most, and make it organic. Otherwise, drink really clean, clear water. And so water, get off your seat, on your feet, go get a glass of water, go for a walk around the block. And here's another strategy that is absolutely wonderful. Yes, you can buy equipment to do this, but it's called earthing. And the best way to do earthing is to literally go out, take your shoes and socks off, and walk on grass or earth, or if you're close to the ocean, walk on the sand. That is going to center and balance you right away. And what they found, there's a lot of research now, but the research shows that your blood platelets are usually all stuck together. When you're stressed out, overwhelmed, and anxious, the platelets are all glued together and gummed together. And when they show the person after only 5 minutes of walking in their bare feet on grass or earth or sand, what happens is those blood platelets start to become free-flowing again. Now, people say to me, I live in the Northeast, there's no way, or the Northwest, or wherever. We got snow, we got rain, whatever. Can't go on the sand or the grass or the earth. Well, one of my clients in the Northeast came up with a great strategy. He got a little box, like a little toy sandbox, barely room for more than his feet, and put sand in that sandbox. And during the winter months, he stands in that sand and just visualizes himself on a beach. And he gets balanced and centered. So that's another simple way to do it without having to go to the expense of buying the earthing mats and so on. But that is an option as well. So earthing is one thing. Breathing, learning to breathe deeply is another. So another option when you shut the computer down, you get off your seat and on your feet, is to walk over to your sofa. Hopefully you've got a timer that you can set for 5 minutes, some relaxing music that you can put on for 5 minutes. You put your feet up, and then you breathe to a count of 4. In to a count of 4, hold to a count of 4, and release to a count of 4. Focus totally on that breathing pattern while you've got that timer on for 5 minutes. And at the end of 5 minutes, you're going to feel like a new person, just like at the end of 5 minutes of earthing you will. And it's, like I said, of course, getting the water into your body. Just an aside on that, I work a lot with fibromyalgia, which for some reason or other impacts a lot of my patients with cancer. And so I actually started working with people who just have fibromyalgia, which is not just a simple illness, a very complex illness. But when we started to have them drink water, drink their body weight in ounces, half of their body weight in ounces every day, that energy level, even for somebody with fibromyalgia, was increased dramatically. So, those are just really simple strategies, but they're really easy to implement, quick and easy to implement, and they will make a huge difference if you're feeling overwhelmed. And, of course, like I said, the other thing is really when you're feeling that way, if you just do a gratitude journal, that'll change your energy frequency as well, because you're feeling gratitude, and that unblocks unblocks what's happened. So, because when you're stressed out, it blocks the flow of everything in your body. If you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, it blocks the flow of everything in your body. The minute that you do something like a gratitude journal, or you go for a walk and thank the universe and God for the trees and the sun and the moon and whatever you're looking at, the birds, the flowers, you start to feel this incredible lightness, and that unblocks that all the whatever's blocked in your system. And so there's a flow. And when there's a flow, you go, basically. So those are some strategies.
Those sound like pretty sound strategies, and I like the idea of overwhelm here, because overwhelm tends to be where you think you've got to do everything at once. And yes. I'm remembering, who was it, Christina Applegate, actress in the movie Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. She, as a teenager now, has to go and work outside the home as Mom's out on an Australian trip, and so she ends up in this fashion design place where she gets to be a personal assistant to one of the bigwig bosses. And so the bigwig boss gives her a whole bunch of things to do, and she just simply smiles and says, "And don't overwhelm yourself. Just do one thing at a time."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is so well said, Daniel, because it's true, isn't it? I mean, when it's overwhelmed, you're not. The best thing you can really do, if you're, other than the things we just talked about, is to literally sit down with a notepad and just brainstorm everything. Brain dump is what we often call it. everything that you think you've got to get done. Because at least when you have it on paper, it takes away some of that overwhelm, because you can actually see what's there and then look at what's most important to do right now, and then the next most important thing to do right now. So living fully in the moment, what can I do right now? Because action is one of the quickest ways, too, to get, that's like changing your physiology. But when you take action on something, instead of sitting and stewing in it, that's when you'll get over the overwhelm, the anxiety, the worry, those kinds of things.
Fascinating stuff. A lot of great information in here and tools for people to use to change their lives. Obviously, it worked very well for you and many people that you've worked with around the globe as well. The book is Instant Energy. It's 5 Keys to Unlimited Energy and Vitality. Our guest today, Dr. Marilyn Joyce. Go ahead for our listeners as we close out here and give a website and give people an idea of where they can get the book again.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that, Daniel. Thank you so much. One of the websites we set up for this, for your listeners, is 5-Minute Energy Tips with an F. So it's the number 5-Minute Energy Tips with an F.com. And there I have prepared a report of the 10 top tips that I teach people in seminars and workshops and with my clients as well. But they're my 10 favorite top tips that you can immediately start. They're all 5-minute tips. You can immediately start doing that right away, and it's a free report for anybody that, and there's another little gift that follows later on. So, so that's what we have to offer. And actually on that website, too, we do have the 5 minutes to help, the Instant Energy book as well. So there, or drmarilynjoyce.com.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and share with our listeners how they can make those turnarounds in just 5 minutes a day. It doesn't take that much, does it?
No, it does not. It's just doing it, being here now, in the moment, living your life in the moment, and just doing 5-minute strategies. We have a saying in my office, 5 minutes, 5 times a day, instant energy guaranteed. And it was actually one of my associates who came up with that. And I thought, wow, that's very cool, because that's really what it boils down to. It doesn't take long, just 5 minutes, 5 times a day.
There it is. Dr. Joyce, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today.
You're so welcome, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's just been an absolute delight.
Right on. Thank you so much. Well, thank you to listeners out there for tuning in. You can also take some instant energy steps by visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. Sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and stay up to date on what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as upcoming shows and events as well. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Beyond 50 Radio as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.